This week on Rockstar Superhero. I spent the past few days trying to figure out the appropriate words to describe Frontierer, the band, the music, and these two souls, Pedram and Callum. Given that it's taken me so long to form my words might give you insight into exactly what makes Frontierer so epic. If you listen to the radio or love traditional pop music, there's an extremely good chance you've never heard of them or would even care to. However, if you're like me and you're always looking around the corner to find the next thing, or if you're already listening to challenging mathematic metal and noise, well, Frontierer might be the best thing you already love and understand. My conversation with Pedram and Callum left me wanting more, and I hope this interview touches you the same way. I say it a lot, but I will tell you this one was pure joy. I mean, what a killer duo and what a sensation the band is. You must check out the new documentary entitled A Trail of Noise, and you should pay careful attention to the new music releases because they'll change your life, whether you want them to or not. This is my interview with the groundbreaking, make that ground-destroying Frontierer on the Rockstar Superhero Podcast. Guys like you really mean something to me. They touch me deep down in my core, and I think that's why music like this works for a certain demographic, because it's actually speaking out for us, right? It's like we're afraid to exhibit a certain type of feeling or a certain type of message, and you're doing it and crushing the world for us. So thank you for being who you are. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's just the way we know how to be. I'm not sure if Callum would agree, but it's just there's no overthinking in that part. It's just raw emotion when we're on stage and when we're performing.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic.
Just kind of there's nothing. Yeah, thank you. That's nice of you to say. I don't think of it as a sort of. I don't think there's a broad range of emotion going on when speaking for the live side of it. I think it's more just opening the tap to all the bad feelings and getting as angry as you possibly can while still being able to play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your band, though, is proof of concept, right? And I guess what I'm getting at is it seems to me, as an outsider from afar, that there's a living sacrifice to what you guys are doing in art and music. And it seems also that it's proof that you're never going to stop. You'll be doing this until you die. So I'm curious, when somebody asks you, what do you do for a living or for joy? What's your answer? We'll start with Pedram.
Okay. So I guess, what do I do for joy? Music primarily, and more recently it's discovering how much I enjoy learning. So I've transitioned career and realized that in that process, I really like learning new things, specifically in the context of technology. A bit of a tech head. So, that would be me. In a very, very vague sort of bold headliner sense, but I could go into more detail. Callum, what about you?
I mean, they're two separate questions there. What we do for a living and what we do for joy, they don't unfortunately always cross over.
Yeah.
For a living, I'm a freelance translator and English teacher, which is actually something I do for joy anyway, because my things I do for fun include languages. Most first and foremost, I'm lucky my job gets to involve that, and music as well. Like Pedram said, of learning new things, I almost have like a new interest every couple of weeks, and I really have a very, very broad range of interests.
Yeah, no, that's great. That leads me then to ask, do you find that you use that in the music or in the songwriting process, that as learning things that you're always approaching Pedram and saying, hey, I want to try this new idea?
Oh, I don't do anything with the writing. That's all.
Okay, that's all. I mean, I assumed that, but I just thought maybe, that the band has evolved a bit over the past few years, that maybe there would be more sort of outsider influence. But if Pedrum's doing it all from ground zero up until the finest, the finished product, it makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, so there's probably a few things I should clarify. One was probably your initial question, and that is that what I do for a living is I'm a software engineer. Prior to that, I was an electrical engineer, and that was my background. And yeah, I guess the fun part is still consistent. It's music and it's learning, and rolling on from there with the songwriting. Yeah, I mean, I like messing around with a lot of new tools and sounds and technologies to help drive the music. But at the same time, I'm quite used to process as well in writing, and that comes from trying to eliminate problems associated with writer's block and creative block. So I try to minimize any stress I have in the writing zone because I can't write otherwise. And by doing that, it alleviates any pressure I put on myself to write music. And where the band's concerned, and where the songwriting is concerned, so I'm the primary writer for Frontierer and for other band sections, which we haven't really kind of done anything in a while. But I'm the primary songwriter. However, when it comes to the live performance aspect, a lot kind of changes in the live realm, and that those changes are mainly on the drums. So Owen will take the drum parts that I've written, and then he will change them to maybe make them a bit more suited to live, but then also might get a bit more creative with them in a different way than I would. And then the rest of the guys, like, we all kind of come together. Sometimes we change bits in songs. We maybe play bits slightly shorter, or we play bits slightly longer. So that's probably the extent of the input that the rest of the band has had on the writing process. It's mainly been in the live realm. I would like that to change, but I'm still at a point where I feel like individually I've got a lot to express, and I haven't lost the sort of drive to keep writing. So I think that will eventually change when I feel like I've run out of ideas, But at the moment, I still feel like I've got something that I want to kind of have most of the creative control over, because I feel like I don't need the external influences right now. But I've opened up more to feedback. Oh, I mean, I'd say I'd open up more to feedback from the rest of the band on the writing process when I'm sending demos and stuff. But we've had Oxidized, our new album, written for quite a while now, and I asked for feedback on that. But I'd be interested to see what Callum's take on that is, because I think maybe I sound more kind of free in that than I actually am. So, what would you say, Callum?
No, it's your project, and you were the one that started it and have the vision, so it's more I guess our model is a bit more autocratic than a lot of bands, but it allows for more efficiency in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah, Tom Stevens does something similar with Weston Supermame. Are you familiar with that band, Pedram?
I'm not, no.
You will be. They're I think they're clearly influenced by you. They have the same sort of writing style and the same sort of approach. And actually, I was talking to him earlier today, and one of his questions and concerns was, how do you take what you've done, in that studio environment and sort of, reprocess it so it works live, because it can't just be as simple as plug and play. And like you mentioned before, the musicians are going to sort of, play with it a bit and make it their own. But I'm curious too, if you're writing more difficult music in a sense now as you're getting older, or if you're paring that back. There's a lot in there. I'm sorry for the ginormous run-on question.
No, it's fine. I'll just make sure that I've clearly answered it properly. I mean, the question about difficulty that's not part of the. If anything, I feel like the music's maybe gotten slightly easier. I mean, Callum's been learning some of the new songs. We've been learning some of the new songs in the practice room. They feel easier to play personally, but I think they sound more difficult. Gotcha. On record, on first listen, they sound more difficult, but really they're more easy. So that's the first part of your question, I'd say. And in terms of the plug and play aspect for live, I've never wanted that. I don't think any of us in the band have wanted that. And there are parts live that, if Callum's playing bass, there are bits that sometimes I want to recreate that are on the record.
Right.
And there are times where I'll be like, do whatever you want, like just recreate something that just works and fits. And it's the same with with Dan. Like, we don't, like, all the effects that I use on the records are a mix of my pedals and what I can do in the box on on Cubase with my Axe Effects. And I end up 9 times out of 10 I end up doing the sound design with the Axe Effects, then trying to find something on the market, like a pedal or something that I can use to recreate that sound in a live setting, and then showing that to the band. But Callum again is probably better placed to provide feedback on the sort of songwriting in the room and how we've tried not to do plug and play. I mean, I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are, Callum.
Yeah, I said you said at some point in the documentary that this, and when I first was listening to Frontier demos of Orange Mathematics back in, it's been like summer of 2015, I think. You were saying mix. I remember listening.
Yeah, it was around that.
Walking around out here in the summer, and thinking like, this is really cool. It's really heavy. It's mental. It's like the heaviest thing I've ever heard, but I can't imagine this leaving the bedroom because it's so produced, it's so layered, it's so dense, and there is no way that you could recreate this with just like 5 guys on stage without like an orchestra of guitars. So I honestly didn't, and I sort of maintained that opinion right up until a few days before I was going to fly back for our first rehearsal for our first show, and so Pedram sent me a video of the first practice, and I thought, oh shit, that's the live sound. And I always had, when I was a teenager and playing in bands, and I always had this fantasy of, yeah man, I'll never write music that can't be reproduced live. And everyone probably has that thought at some point, and as you get older you realize, like, well, it's a bit, there's no point. Why? If you don't want to go to a live show, you could just stay at home and listen to the record. Why would you want to go to a show if it's not going to be different? So it's a very different approach. And we really, because the songwriting is compartmentalized within the band, that we really approach the live show with more, maybe a bit more vigor than we would otherwise, because this is like, okay, this is our job. This is how can we take this and make it interesting live. And it is different. It ends up sounding different. There's only 2 guitars. We make it as heavy as possible. Sure. Thanks to our wonderful sound tech who makes it sound like a sledgehammer every night.
Yeah.
And it's like Pedram said, it's a lot of it is finding something that kind of approximates the sound. A little bit like the sort of the song, the whole songs themselves are kind of approximations of music. The live show is kind of, let's just give you the idea of the song, but as close as possible. We still stick to it as close as we can.
Yeah.
That's the fun part as well. Like, it's uncalculated. The live part is so uncalculated, it's unpredictable until we get into a room and then we structure it. Whereas the songs are more calculated. There's more precision. So yeah.
Callum had mentioned there's so much going on. How do you make this? How do you make this happen live? Obviously, with so much going on and so much sort of mathematical chaos, I can't imagine this being the kind of thing you would ever do backing tracks with. You're not going to take the Devin Townsend approach to music and have this sort of perfect layered thing. But have you ever considered having, opening or closing tracks to sort of present the song, and then this sort of freeform center happens?
We kind of do that anyway. There are certain breaks in the songs which are samples, the little blocks of electronic stuff in the middle of it. We've done it almost from the start, really. We've got usually Owen's got samples loaded up on a Roland, I can't remember the name of it. What's the name of his pad thing? One of those Roland sample pads.
He's got a Roland sample pad. I can't remember the specific model, but he's got a sample pad that we use. He's
got them queued up and he'll hit them at certain points. And sometimes it's between the tracks live. Sometimes in the middle of the tracks, and it's happening more, I think, with the third album stuff. But we've talked about it before, and I don't think I have any interest in doing, even playing to like clicks live and playing to sample tracks. It's just, I think it makes for a more interesting show when music that's as chaotic as this has an organic feel to it.
Yeah. I've certainly heard more chaotic, and what I guess I'm trying to say is your music is so heavy and complex. I'm a drummer, so I'm listening for the things in between, right? I'm looking for the pulse. And what I love about your stuff is it's heavy and disconcerting. It has a mood. And at the same time, there's this thing that's happening underneath. It gets twisted around a bit, but it's in general, right? There's that pulse that's happening in there. So it feels very much like chaos, but really, really tightly controlled. And I think that's a testimony to the talent and a testimony to the songwriting from the ground zero.
No, thank you very much. Just to kind of expand on that, we're talking, Callum's talking about the sample pad, and we're talking about live samples and stuff. I mean, it's all contextual, and there's always, we never throw any idea away if there's a use for something. I mean, blanket, for a time I said blanket, like no click tracks, this and that, like we're not going to use it. And we aren't, like, we're not really using, we haven't played any sort of shows or anything live with clicks, but we're experimenting at the moment in the practice room with ways in which we can incorporate more of the electronic sounds live that meet a sort of balance between convenience and quality and delivering that in a live setting. Because rather than completely reinvent the wheel with the band, but when it comes to the sound, I like to kind of iterate things in steps and kind of toe dip in rather than just rush right in, if that makes sense. So basically what I'm trying to say is that for some of the future shows, when shows come back and future tours and festivals, we'll be trying a few things here or there that are maybe a bit different. And, there may be sections of songs that are less chaotic that are maybe synced briefly to a click in order to facilitate some change, but at this point I don't really know. So it's like we try to consider the whole experience live, like holistically, like it's every factor that makes up the live performance. So we look at it from all angles. It's not just like, oh, we need a click so we can stay in time and we can all hear each other. It's like, oh, we might want to try a click so that we can cue this electronic break that we're not maybe going to be able to do with our hands or something like that for this limited period of time in a song,
Wow. Yeah. Where does this musical mindset come from? I mean, do you sort of bend music to your will? I'm kind of curious where it all percolates. How does it happen for you as a songwriter?
How do you mean, like, how do I bend music? Like, just clarify, and I'll see if I can give you a
I guess what I'm trying to say with my own sort of fancy vernacular is how do you actually decide to write music the way you write it? Everybody has an approach, but you're writing something so different. I get it. There's a lot of math metal or mathcore or whatever anybody wants to label something. I don't think you're any of those things. I think you're all of those things. But your voice seems to be quite singular. You might be influenced by, I don't know, name a band, Car Bomb, but that doesn't make you Car Bomb. It doesn't make you even remotely like, in fact, right? So where does your musical madness come from? Maybe is a better way to say.
A mix of influences, but often, like, if I'm writing Frontierer, I'm, maybe selecting my favorite influences in the genre and trying to cross over the elements of the bands I like. Like, I'm maybe trying to cross over converge punk beats with, Car Bomb pitch shifting, and then I'm maybe just describing Frontierer to you right now, but then I'm maybe trying to do something, some Nine Inch Nails kind of electronics in there. So really the madness, or whatever we want to call it, whatever I'm writing, is literally me just, and I've said it in the documentary as well, it's taking my favorite bits of bands and stringing them together to make something new, because I feel like that's how I dissect music in my head. Like when I listen to other bands, I try to listen to where they got their influences from. And when I, take a band like Converge that's been around for years, like I never necessarily listened to all the bands that Kurt Ballou liked growing up. But I like Converge, and I might not delve into that back catalogue. But people that discover Frontierer at a point in time may not go back and discover, might not find Car Bomb, or they might not find Converge, but they might hear Frontierer. So, yeah, I guess, long story short, it's a combination of taking the best bits of my favorite bands and then just writing stuff that I genuinely vibe with in the room. Like, it's like one-man band practice when I'm writing, Sure. I'm like, oh, I love this bit. I need to write this bit. Okay, I'm going to add this bit. I need to, this needs to flow. That needs to flow. But like, there's a conscious decision whenever I'm writing to not just write like, wanky shit. Like I hate that. I hate like technical riffs for the sake of technical riffs, and I can hear that sometimes in music, and I don't know, I get like an internal cringe when if I listen back to some of the stuff I wrote, and I'm like, there's no feeling in that what I've written at the time. I just discard those ideas because I don't get genuinely amped on it,
Yeah, I think that's why it works so well, though, because it does feel like you. Like I mentioned the word singular before. There's a reason it sounds the way it sounds, right? It's Pedrum's style and vision, and it gets consolidated by these other incredible musicians who, you're in alignment with. And that's cool and rare. I'm curious, though, what kind of music does not influence you? Like, what don't you listen to?
What don't I listen to?
Yeah, like you're like, oh man, I can't stand pop music, or I can't stand Kate Bush, or
I mean, I don't listen to reggae. Like, I've never really gotten much out of reggae. Callum would probably be the opposite. Like, Callum loves reggae jams. I don't dislike it either. I just don't really listen to it. To be honest, I've not really in later years, definitely since the pandemic, I don't really listen to enough music, as much music as I'd like to. I definitely don't discover as much new artists as I like to, and I think maybe that will come to a point where my music becomes, or maybe already has become, so insular that I then maybe don't end up reinventing. But I feel like I would have the foresight to know when I've kind of maxed out the influences, if that makes sense. That's the point where I start jumping for new music. Like before a summer holiday, I would always go and like hoard a whole load of albums, tracks, and everything, and stick them on my iPod or something like that. And like just albums I've never heard of, I'd ask for recommendations. I would literally just go download hundreds and hundreds of songs. Sorry, copywriters. But I would literally just go and rip loads and loads of tracks, or I'd look at Bandcamp compilations, maybe for electronic music, and then I would find favorite tracks on that holiday, and I'd associate that holiday with those tracks, and then those tracks would become lifelong influence tracks that would inform my creative process for the band.
Yeah. I know we're here to talk about the documentary today, and I know we will talk about that. And I know I also don't have you for a very long time, so I will keep it brief. But I'm curious, I should say I've heard through the grapevine that you have a new record coming out in end of September. Is that true?
It's actually going to be the 1st of October now, but yeah, we're about to make some more kind of announcements on social media about it. But yeah, that's the case.
Gotcha. Okay, so all that being said, then I know this is an obvious question, but how much has coronavirus honed your skills? Sort of forced you to re-examine how you write, who you are, the direction you're taking things. How has that affected you?
So I would say over the course of Corona, most of this album was already written.
Oh, okay.
Before it. So I've been sitting on it for quite some time. Corona, like the COVID period has been a refinement period a bit on some of the existing tracks in the album. I went back, changed tracks. I got lyrics and vocals from Chad. I haven't written a great deal. I had already written about half of a fourth album, and I went back and had like a burst period, like in a month or a couple of weeks, where I wrote 3 or 4 new tracks. I thought, those are going to be an album 4. Since then, I got made redundant at my last job, and I retrained, and I put so much focus into that during COVID that I put writing on the back burner because I was like, I have an album coming out at some point when this is kind of over anyway. Like, I'm not going to put the creative pressure on myself, and I'm going to see if just the time out allows me to come back and write better stuff.
Yeah.
So really, like, the writing process and whatnot hasn't changed. I've been working on a couple of other albums for other bands as well. I've been taking on more like production based jobs. So I've worked on 2 albums that have come out since then, Fawn Limbs and People Slicer. People Slicer came out on Prosthetic Records, and I'm working on more. So yeah, long answer to your question.
That's great. That's great. Guys like you remind me I'm lazy as hell.
You're lazy. You feel like you're lazy?
I must be, because I listen to you say the things you're saying. I think of all the work you're doing, all the different pieces you're writing, all the different variations and themes and the directions you're putting them depending on what you're writing. I can't imagine having enough time in the day. Without getting too personal, do you have a family that gets in the way? Because I do, for example. I can't imagine doing what you do with a family.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important question because it's something that I've like been thinking about for the last while. I have my direct family, but I don't have any dependents. I don't have any kids, and I'm currently single. So yeah, I have the time from that perspective. But it's a challenge, and it was a challenge when I, wasn't single. So it is difficult, but at the same time, like my personality, like I can't sit still. Like I like the idea of limited time and just doing things, and then that's me. I've got a free evening. I don't have to do any, like nothing else. Yeah. It's like clock off. I like the idea of it, but in practice, like I don't know if it's to do with my mental state or what, like my mental health, but I just can't do it. I've tried it and I just can't do it. So I'm very driven with that sort of stuff, and I like to get stuff done. I think I'd say Callum comes sort of from that same realm as well. Like you do a lot of different things, and you've had a lot of different life experiences that have informed how you view music. But I'll let you maybe talk to us a bit more about that.
I'm lazy as hell.
I wouldn't say that.
You look great.
when I've just, it's one of the reasons why I'm really glad that Callum joined Frontier is that he's not lazy in the way that I think he thinks he is. For me, he's if you ask him to do something, like he will 100% always give it a go. And like when we asked him to do Frontier, I think at the time he was excited to do it because we had been in high school bands, and then like it just felt like the natural thing to do to be in a band with Callum because like we'd played at school and stuff like that, and I knew that he wanted to kind of be in a band. But when it's come to like Frontier, he's put a lot of, I'll let him tell you yourself, but he puts in a lot of initiative to everything that we do as a band when it comes to like, especially in the last tour, like the merch and stuff like that, and doing all the like extra mile stuff. Like I sometimes take things like a very high level, like I look at like the high level vision of things, but this is where like having everybody in the band makes a huge difference because people contribute in lots of different ways to all the like the call it the low level stuff that really makes the band a functional band, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And not just a record.
Yeah. The documentary is really, really good. Trail of Noise is that's the correct title, right? It's not just my brain thinking it's called that.
No, that's it. That's Banger TV. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And so, how did that all come together? I had heard that you had commissioned one of your fans who happens to be a Banger TV guy to do work, and it obviously, I mean, it's very much a love letter to what you do and what you've put together. But I'm curious how it all started. Who propositioned who, and why?
I guess it was me, but like I guess the approach that I took was I sort of felt like in terms of content, like part of it was driven by like a content thing, and then part of it was like driven by the idea. Like we didn't have a lot of video content, and I just thought, I'd seen some band documentaries around the time, kind of in this scene as well, and I thought they were really pessimistic about the outlook for musicians trying to do something that they cared about, because you were never going to get paid. People are going to treat you like shit. Like, I mean, that stuff genuinely does happen, but I just wanted us to kind of naturally have somebody document our story that was interested in the music, that wasn't putting like a bias on it. They were just telling the story, and doing that on our biggest tour. So I saw that as an opportunity to invite Brad over from Canada, from who also worked at Banger TV, to come and film the doc. And we had no plan. Like, we had a rough plan for it, like before we came out, but we didn't have like set plans. It was very improvised. Like, Brad ended up nearly scrapping the whole thing, start again. In fact, I think he did scrap it at one point and redid the whole thing again. And remember, he had hundreds, like he had hours and hours and hours of video footage, and he put it together himself. Basically all on his own. He had, I think his friend Dylan did the graphic for the map. Callum did the transcribing for the translations. But the rest, as far as I'm concerned, was Brad and our photographer Nick, who lent some helping hands with the cameras at the time. And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, in plain simple terms, part of it was just, it was whimsical, and I do that, and I know the guys will say that I do that. I sometimes have these whimsical ideas that are maybe not thought through. They're just like, this would be a great idea, let's do it, and I like the fun in that. It's sometimes not practical. In this case, it worked out, but there were definitely challenges associated. But like, that's fun, and sometimes having a mixed outcome is a good reflective experience for moving forward.
Yeah. Banger. How do I want to ask this question? Banger obviously is where Brad is at. I mean, he's with Banger, but. Yeah. Did they have the right to say, yeah, no, we're not going to release this? You know what I mean? Because I mean, I think of Banger from an American perspective. We're not listening here, sadly. We're not getting a lot of your type of material over here in the States. The States is just full of, pop music and country music. We don't get aggressive new things. Frontierer feels new, even if you've been around a really long time. Did Banger have final say to release that?
Yeah, I mean, it was going entirely on their platform. The whole idea of the documentary, the pitch and everything, Brad had to do that with Banger to check. And initially, that pitch was originally going to be 3 10-minute videos over 3 parts. But I was kind of pushing more for one single video. It didn't make sense to kind of drip release it over 3, like a 3-part Vice type thing or something like that. It just felt like it should be one. So the compromise was that they let us do the whole video somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes, and it just ended up at just over 20. And they had final creative input. They watched it all back. But I think Brad obviously knew what they were expecting. He works there. He knows their branding. He knows their way of working. So when he did the documentary, I think he had that in mind, as it was his kind of creative baby. From that point of view.
Well, it captures, I mean, a really broad snapshot. To me, it feels like it's telling the tale of Frontierer, but making it about now. And yet it feels like it's captured some history. And I think that's what makes it really appealing. Plus, it's like you said, it's not too long. I think it's 20, 25 minutes. So it just gets right to the gut of it, which is, I guess, the point of your music as well. It's just to take you right into the middle of it and see what you do. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It literally just filmed us over the course of the 3 weeks. It's like we weren't, Brad would just take us aside and ask us if we wanted to do like an interview in a certain venue. So much of it was just influenced by the environments we were in, and those were environments that maybe Brad was, was unfamiliar with because he hadn't been to Europe before. So a lot of that was new to him. So there were aspects he wanted to capture to kind of compare his experience, I think, with touring in North America versus touring in Europe. So there was a bit of that, but it was just it was exactly what I wanted it to be from the point of view of an honest, truthful highlight of where the band was at that point in time. And I mean, a lot of stuff's happened since then, because that was 2019 summer.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely going to be something that we can kind of look back on, and I'd love to do, 15 years or something like that, do like another one, and like just see the transition and the change over that period of time. It's just fun to watch.
Yeah. So this question is for both of you, and I'll start with Callum, since I'd like to hear his voice a little bit here. I listened to something like Frontier, and I am so envious. I would even ramp it up to say I'm jealous, because you guys get to be a part of something so significant and groundbreaking. And I'm wondering, being a part of it, do you feel like you've reached the thing you're seeking, right? A lot of musicians are always seeking ways to fill the gaps in their life, something that they're chasing their whole life, a certain feeling or fame or success or notoriety. And I don't get that from you guys at all. But, what are you chasing, Callum, and has Frontier filled that for you?
I don't think we're chasing anything, really. It has just sort of come around incidentally, a lot of it. I think Pedram is the one with more of a goal and something to strive for, because he's the artistic mind behind it, and as long as Pedram feels like he has stuff to write, then we'll keep doing it. And it's not, it doesn't feel like I'm looking for something. We've had amazing opportunities and done so many great shows, and more than I thought I would get to do, and played in some incredible places, and met so many amazing people, which has been unbelievable. So I think if we never did another show again, I'd be super happy with what we've done and what I got to do, these experiences we got to have. But by the same token, let's see what else we can do, what other great experiences we can have.
I would actually add to that and ask you if you feel creatively like fulfilled with this band, given that it's not your writing material. Do you feel creatively fulfilled?
Yes, that's the next question for sure. Yeah.
I don't know. No, I guess, but I don't know if I'm looking for creative fulfillment. I had a conversation with Dan, a guitarist, quite early on, and when we were doing shows, and I said like how it kind of felt like we were. I said it felt like feels a bit odd that we're just sort of tacking on for this half of Frontier when we don't write any of the stuff, but we just do the shows. And I was like, that's not really what bands do. That's not what musicians in bands do. You have this archetype in your mind of the musician creator who's a creative under that kind of almost a buzzword. And Dan said, well, yeah, but I think of it more as we're not just writers, we're performers. And that's kind of how I've come to think of it. I like that way of thinking of it. Is the part I do, and the part the three of us in the band who don't write stuff, is our job as the performers. Our job is to perform the show, and not, I guess.
No, it's a great answer. It's perfect.
I was going to make a really sort of pretentious comparison to actors and not writing the plays that they perform, but that is almost. You get what I'm alluding to, but I'm not going to fulfill that because that sounds really wanky.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, I'll let Pedram answer, but I do want to say that because as you were speaking, Callum, that's exactly what I thought of. I thought of, a great playwright. I don't know. Let's just throw Shakespeare out there just to be safe. And that, you have to come in, you have to have the skill set to perform it. And you have to sort of hit the notes of the original's vision, but you're allowed to kind of interpret it a little, at least up to what the director says, right? Yeah. So I'm assuming, Pedram, that might be your follow-up response as well?
I think I'm trying to come from it from an angle where I don't want the rest of the band to feel like they're just in a small a small covers band with a lot of insular material. Like I'd like it to be more than that, but at the same time, at this point in time with the writing, I still have a lot of creative vision for the writing, and I'm trying to kind of bend my writing to help in that fulfillment of everybody else's musical goals, whether or not they have like specific goals that they want to achieve. Just knowing that what we write or what I write hits a musical spot for them and resonates for them as much as it does for me. And I tried to do that with the new record from the point of view of how some of the songs were written and how they would translate live, so that, you know, it made it a bit easier for us to have more freedom on the stage, not be tied down to the pedal boards all the time. So like I'm consciously thinking of all these things, even if I don't explicitly talk to the band about them. Like I constantly trying to take on the feedback, and that's what I think helps drive Frontier change. I don't even know if the band kind of realize that as much, but it might make more sense now that I've kind of verbalized that. To answer your original question, could you actually just repeat it so that I can make sure I hit the response back properly?
No, I think if you're talking about the question about chasing, you know, what's in your heart or what's in your soul, I'm trying not to cheesy it, right? Because I don't want to ask it almost sounds like I'm asking a question for church, you know what I mean? But it seems to me the artists all of us have some sort of thing that we're seeking to fulfill, you know, this hole in our lives somewhere, holes in our psyche, holes in our spirit, whatever it is. And we're chasing it. And it seems to me that your music, you know, has sort of created a fulfillment, and then you've brought these other guys in to help you achieve more fulfillment. But I'm just curious if you feel actually fulfilled.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I think that's one of those weird things where I couldn't imagine my life without the band particularly, or like music in general, because, you know, as much as I am the age that I am, and like, you know, I'm looking forward to the future, you still have, you know, at the age of about 30, 31, I still got these like pipe dreams about playing festivals that I would have only dreamed of playing when I was a kid, and that some of that feels realizable and like today. So if I didn't have that, honestly, like I don't know what it would be like. It'd be weird. I'd have to find another hobby to have something to dream about realizing, if that makes sense. So yeah, I absolutely feel fulfilled currently with everything that we've done to date, and I'm very excited for what will inevitably come next with the new album. And then we've got a couple of we've got a kind of a tour sort of lined up already for next year. So there's a lot for us to be excited about, I think, going forward.
Yeah. Will we see you in the States ever?
I really do hope so. At this point, we had representation in the States, but we don't anymore. Mm-hmm. We've parted ways with our last our previous agent. So we're kind of making some moves in the background, speaking to some other people. I think the challenges with the States in particular are around some of the logistical issues and some of the, I'll be honest, like the difference in art appreciation in the States compared to Europe, and how that translates to realizing the practicalities of coming over and doing a tour. So, you know, we don't have label backing, but like we all have good, well-paid jobs, and we can support ourselves to the point where a label would be paying like advances and stuff. But the visas, you know, the visas are a barrier. The flights are then a barrier. Like we've costed it all, and we've looked at it, and anytime we had an offer, it just, you know, it didn't make sense, or it fell through, or you know, the availability that we had didn't line up with our previous agent's expectations. And I think that's one of the challenges as well with the band, is that, you know, having the full-time jobs and having, you know, set amounts of holidays a year that we can take although things have kind of changed now with people's careers and remote working and stuff, those were barriers to being able to do some stuff in Europe and some stuff in America. To answer the question in a short, simple sense, I have no doubt that we will be out at some point.
Good.
But it's kind of like, it's sort of like the label offer, except more likely it's like it has to happen in the right way, in the right terms, at the right time. But we're actively, making steps to do that behind the scenes. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, I know that the logistics of playing a show in the States is tough. Just driving it around, let alone the costs of getting here, all the things, all the crappy clubs, because your type of music isn't going to get, the WAMU theater is going to get, a little hole in the wall. And then maybe, right. And this isn't me being mean. I'm just saying the reality is if we don't know, we don't know, right? There's so much naivete or ignorance, whatever you want to call it, to, your style of music. And it bums me out because I like you, I don't get to just fly to Europe and see Frontierer because I want to. I mean, that's an expensive endeavor,
Yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I know what you mean. But I think it's difficult because America, like if we're talking like business sense, like America's our biggest market. That's where most of our fans are.
It's so great.
And if our fans in Europe, if the fans in America are even half of like our experiences are like in Europe, I have no doubt that we would have some absolutely batshit insane shows over there that we would love. And I think the pent up demand there as well, it's kind of like a factor. If for people that really want to see this music played live, but again, it's like those aren't just the people you have to convince. It's the agents, the bookers, the promoters. Everybody is kind of there's a lot you have to do. And even with a band like us, that we've had like some modest success, even the people working in your team, it takes a lot to tell them that you feel that you're worth more than $150 a night playing later than 6:30 p.m. as the first band on a bill. Like it's being flat out honest. Like it's just not worth it. Like it's hard to say, but like it's just not worth it to come thousands of miles. Like the hospitality that we've received in Europe has been like the opposite from promoters. They don't feel good. Like they don't feel good about you not getting a bed at night to go and like sleep in or whatever. And it's the UK has a kind of similar it's kind of like a halfway house between America and Europe in terms of like culture and the way that bands get treated. I think it needs to kind of change, and I hope that with music being in a very dire position, live music particularly, I hope that does change more going forward. Callum, what's your opinion on all that on American tours and everything that we were chatting about?
It's the same as you. Yeah, it's not been worth it yet.
Yeah,
it is a big hurdle when we have to, at the very basic, our first cost is paying $1,000 each out of our own pockets to maybe get a visa. That's a big risk.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I apologize if that question came off maybe a little jaded or bitter. I could feel the room bristle, but I think it's just really tough. Again, we're predictable here, and Unride is Ren, right? I mean, there's nothing about us that is interested in anything, for the most part, remotely artistic. I mean, I love that you have a giant fan base here. I love that's even possible. But it seems that it's hidden in the cracks. They come out when those shows come to the States, but they're buying your material and your T-shirts and everything else. I look online and I see all your stuff is all sold out. So there's obviously a huge fan base that loves what you do. I mean, I'll fight for a T-shirt because I want one.
I think there are communities. The music by its very nature is not popular. It's the opposite of popular music, and the communities that are into it are inevitably going to be
really into it,
vast minorities. But the flip side of that is when you're in a smaller group that is really into it, you're very passionate about it. But that's definitely true in Europe, and it's definitely true in the UK. You know, in your day-to-day life here, it's not like everyone's going around out there wearing Slipknot and Full of Hell shirts. It's a minority thing, and it always is. That's what metal in particular has always been. But I think the difference is, like Pedram said, the UK is somewhere between the US and Europe in terms of, and I'm speaking, of course, for impressions of the US. I've been to the US, but only like on holiday to Disney World. It's not really been a real experience of the country. This is from an observer's experience, really, and talking to Americans. That in the UK, there isn't as much of an appreciation of art for art's sake. In Europe, the communities for who appreciate metal are small. They're bigger in the north of Europe than in the south of Europe. But the difference is that there's just more infrastructure in place to support these events. There's a lot of government support that means you get crazy venues. Like a lot of the venues we played have been like youth clubs, even like half run or half run by the government, that they're anyone associated with them can ask to put on a show for either free or for very little, and they're wonderful buildings, fantastic venues. So that is kind of, and the hospitality side of it, like all the promoters we worked with are incredible and have made us feel so welcome, and all the fans and everything has made us feel so welcome in Europe.
Yeah. So
the UK is a little bit.
Just to add to that as well, like as Callum was saying, we played a lot of like youth clubs and stuff. Like, you know, when we played in Denmark, I'm pretty sure at least one of those shows was funded or subsidized through like government initiatives to help with live performance and stuff. Like that obviously helps a lot to allow music like that to flourish and continue. But I mean, that's, you know, it's something that helps influence and enables, you know, it's an enabler that allows the music to grow and the fan base to grow for bands like us to have people that follow us. I think the frustrating thing is with America is it feels like there's such a big financial disconnect. Like we have very dedicated fans over there. Like, you know, I actually, you know, there's more of them. There's more of them than we have in other parts of the world. There's just this huge financial barrier that's stopping us from realizing that. And I'm hoping that will overcome a future opportunity, and trying to make that work actively rather than just sort of, you know, waiting for the day. Like we are actively trying to find ways to do it that makes sense.
Yeah, and I would imagine too the other sort of knife in the butter is when you put together a tour, if you can put together a tour, who do you find that's appropriate to tour with? Because the type of music you do, I don't know if anybody would want to see, say, 3 bands play that kind of music, right? Like it might be wise to have like yourself and a Shining from Norway and a Haken or something, right? Where you have these 3 sort of radical, disparate ideas happening to bring in, you know, new fans and to actually, you know, play larger shows. What's an ideal touring scenario for you if it ever happens?
So I'll jump on that one first, and then I'll let Callum maybe go after. I think from the point of view of us being the way we are in terms of sound, like we're a differentiator. So, you know, some promoter or some agent might just view us as a novelty band that will fit on a lineup that might not necessarily be directly linked, but that has a different sound that isn't just going to sound like the headliner or the main support that's coming on before the headliner, right? So that is, like, in my view, that's an advantage, or at least it's an advantage to like pitch to a, you know, an agent or whatnot, and our sound being, you know, different. Going on from there, I just want to answer. Could you repeat the first part of the question there, Robert?
I'm just kind of curious, you know, who you would see are contemporaries that you could go on tour with. You know, bands that you complement or that complement you, but you're not all the same.
Sure. I mean, like, to be honest, any of our influences, like any of my influences, like it would be could be Meshuggah. I mean, it could be Nine Inch Nails. It could be Converge. It could be, you know, the Dillinger Escape Plan if they ever reformed.
If they ever
I mean, there might be overlaps there, but I think, you know, you put a tour together with, you know, with like a couple of those bands. Take for example Meshuggah. Meshuggah and Converge are playing together next year. Like in the States, there's a tour Meshuggah supporting with Converge supporting. I think I like to kind of be in that realm where we're adaptable to those sort of lineups, and like if we could recreate something like when Dillinger supported System of a Down, like System of a Down were one of my favorite bands, or one of Calum's favorite bands as well. Like we'll consider options as they come, and if they make sense for us. Like we're not limiting it. I'm not limiting it to, a style thing between us and
Sure.
them. If it makes sense somehow in some way, whether it's the visual art over the sonic output, then we'll consider it, because I think it would be boring to just play with bands that sound, kind of similar to us. It's boring for a live, for a fan, like to just see what is essentially the same dynamic for
Right.
an hour and a half.
Big
2 hours.
wall of sound just blasting them for 3 hours.
Yeah, but like at the same time, like you can have Frontiera play with Sun. Like
Yeah.
Sun's a wall of sound, but it's a different kind of wall of sound.
True.
And then Frontiera has a completely different kind of sound. So I think having contrasting dynamics is probably the key thing there, really, for me. Cal, what do you think?
Yeah, I've not really got an idea like this band would be good, but the longer we go on, I think the more I think that the stereotypical lineup wouldn't be much fun. It wouldn't be enjoyable to go and see a show and just get battered in the ears for 3 hours. You'd go numb, and by the time the headliner comes on, you're just done with it. What's the point? I think though that is what probably commercially makes more sense. So that's probably going to inevitably be what happens most of it. But I would rather like a more sort of thoughtfully curated lineup, I guess. Some of my favorite shows that we've done have been in Paris, because we've had support bands who are so different. They're quite like our first show in Paris, we played with a band called Brain Juice Drainer. That was 2 guys, a guitarist and a drummer, who were kind of like Converge-ish, but just 2 of them, and a bit garage rocky and Converge. And then there was a band called Powell's who were like on the other end of the spectrum. There were like 7 of them on stage, 2 drummers,
Wow.
all instrumental, really kind of art rocky but a little bit heavy at the same time. And then in the last thing they played Paris, we had other bands called YCCY and a band called Oine, I think they're from Switzerland, and they were heavy and definitely within the sort of rock and roll or metal category, but definitely less towards the metal side of it, a bit more art rocky. And it was just, I just thought it was a really, really clever lineup. And I mean, fortunately, the crowds were there, were not for one or the other. They were there and both to enjoy all of it. I would really like something interesting like that, something a bit more unexpected, I guess.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pedram.
Yeah, it was just to add to that as well. Our experience to date has been headlining all of our tours. We've played the festivals, but we've headlined on all these tours. So now that we're with Avocado, who are booking agents in Europe, we're looking to find more of these support bills and to find out what works. So we have one for next year, which I guess will be announced at some point soon. So we're actually now experimenting and seeing like, when we support XYZ band, like what's the response like? How do people react to this? What does it sound like for us? So we're very much at the start of that journey now, not being the headliner and supporting, which is going to be fun. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's great. Before I let you go, can I ask you a couple of silly questions I like to ask everybody?
Definitely.
Good. What did your parents warn you about that you ignored?
Cam, you go first.
As he looks around the room.
I'm in my parents' house just now, so I'm looking at a photo of my mother's disapproving face on the wall and thinking, Christ, what have I done? I don't know. So many things, because there's... Wait, okay, here's a good one, right? This is probably not what you're asking. But when I was very young, and I was like 4 probably, for whatever reason, my mother handed me a spray bottle of kitchen cleaner in the kitchen and said, "Hold this, don't point it at your face, and went away for something. So I literally remember like looking down the barrel of it and going, doing spraying in my eyes, and then screaming the house down. She had to like pin me down in the shower and wash it out of my eyes. That was a warning that I ignored, and wasn't the last time I did that.
I was going to say, and you probably did it yesterday or something. That's great. That's great. How about you, Pedram?
Mine's so shit. I'm honestly struggling to think right now. This has really caught me off guard. I'm going to go with a really fucking boring one and just say biting my nails. Like, I'm really, really bad for that, and my hands are a bit fucked from it, to be honest, to the point where sometimes it was actually painful playing guitar because it was just really bad. So yeah, I'm going to go with that boring one. If I think of a better one, I'll write it up to you and send it in an email.
Chime in. That's great. Okay, and then the last question is, what do you wish you knew back then? Why don't you go first, Pedram?
What do I wish I knew back then? And presumably that can just be like at any point in time. I'm actually going to go for a career one here. And because it's been quite important to me as I realized I've switched careers now, and it's that there are lots of ways to learn, and that is, academically, anything that you want to learn. If you can't learn it some way and it deters you, find another way to learn the same thing, because that forced a career diversion for me over the span of about 10 years. So yeah. If you can't learn something one way from the way someone's teaching you, go learn it another way and stick with the topic.
Nice answer. That's complex as surprisingly. I love it. Love it. How about you, Callum?
That I was going to go bald, because then I wouldn't have spent so many years trying to grow my hair.
Oh my God. That's great. I should just cut it right there. That's perfect. I love it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rob, for talking to us today. This has been really, really great. Genuinely, fantastic. You're a really great host, and appreciate you having some time for us today.
Well, I mean, the pleasure is all mine, and I'll tell you, not only was I actually tremendously nervous talking to you guys. I mean, you guys really have really touched a nerve with me and influenced me. And it matters a lot, right? It matters to me that your voices get bigger and louder, and that more people know who you are, because you really do create something very special and you perform something amazing. And I really hope to see it live someday. So thank you so much, guys. It's really, really special.
Thank you.
Really glad. We're really glad that we could influence you in any way, shape, or form. So please keep in touch. Hope you enjoy the new record when it's out, and maybe hopefully one day we'll see you over the pond.
I will. I'll be over for sure. And my friend Seth says please come over and play at his wedding. He wants you to perform Tunnel Jumper.
That comes up so much. So we've made so many jokes about playing weddings.
Tunnel Jumper.
We need to do it.
Maybe one day. I mean, we'll maybe Seth hit us up in a few years' time. Definitely, we'll if he's not married by then, definitely, or maybe we can come to the reunion or something like that. I don't know, the anniversary.